Okay, so a Tuesday morning live stream, something we haven't done before, but what does it matter? Football season is here and we have got so much to talk about. Quite frankly, I didn't know if I could fit all the subjects we needed to broach in 3 weekly live streams plus the evening live streams. So we're here Tuesday morning. Happy you could join us. As always, before we jump into this, guys, if you're into college football fanware, head over to homefield.com. Use code ATTS15 for 15% off your order. They have the best college football fanware in the game, vintage apparel, stuff you don't want to miss. But all that being said, there's a lot for us to get into. We have some week one games we need to talk about. Really want to get into this Utah-Florida game because it's one I've been thinking about constantly. We also need to talk about the projected Alabama depth chart. Nick Saban choosing not to release one yesterday, so you already know. With him choosing not to release a depth chart, I'm going to release my own. And then finally, the subject we are going to lead off with, there is another fantastic recruitment battle happening right in front of our very eyes. And what more could you ask for as a college football fan? Week 0 in the books. Week 1 is here. Thursday, we get a great game. Friday, a quasi 5-star defensive lineman announces, and it's two of the biggest brands in college football that look to be going back and forth for his commitment. That is all we could ask for to start off a college football season. And let's start right there. Y'all already know one of my favorite aspects of college football is recruiting. It's really the big reason why I got into this. Recruiting lends hope not only to the individuals that get the scholarship, but to the entire town. I've told this story multiple times and I'm going to tell it again. I was born and raised in Gainesville, Texas, just 45 minutes from where I sit right now. Now, Gainesville is a smaller town. Poverty's there, right? The poverty line is quite high. But the whole attitude of Gainesville changed when 2 kids from my class ended up getting scholarships to go play college football. Now, Gainesville was a town that had plenty of college talent in it, but that talent could be found sitting on the block after they graduated high school instead of going and pursuing something greater. But I watched the entire attitude of the town change whenever Denzel and David ended up getting their scholarships and going on and doing something greater with their lives. What it did was give hope. And it always reminds me of a quote from my favorite movie, Coach Carter. What is your deepest fear? Your deepest fear is not that you are inadequate. Your deepest fear is that you are powerful beyond measure. And when you find that power, you give others permission to find their light as well. That's always what college football recruiting has been to me. Not only are these kids getting an opportunity to go play college football, but they are allowing others in their town to believe in themselves, to find their own light, and to have the affirmation that there is something larger out there. And in towns such as Gainesville, Texas, where I came from, that was a big deal. Showing these kids that there was something larger. Now, that was a whole long soliloquy as to why I love college football recruiting that holds next to no bearing on the conversation we're going to be having right now, other than just to point out, I think college football recruiting is really cool, really impactful, and I think it needs to be talked about. But let's talk Dominic McKinley. We're talking about the number 38 prospect in the nation per the 24/7 Sports Composite, a top defensive lineman, and the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana. Now, already, when I say the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, you might sit there and say, LSU is going to be all over that. And you would have certainly thought so. However, it seems to be the more time that goes on, this is a 2-team race, or largely is a 2-team race. Now, there is a third team that I have heard is creeping into this, and we're certainly going to talk about it, but the lion's share of our time here is going to be spent on the 2 teams, being the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, if we look at the 24/7 Sports website, Dominic McKinley has a crystal ball inserted in his favor for the Texas Longhorns. And Texas, we have to understand, has Bo Davis as a defensive line recruiter and coach. He is a sensational defensive line coach. He is a no-nonsense type guy that, in my opinion, is someone who is very necessary for Texas to get back to the team they want to be. He's not going to coddle you. He's not going to hold your hand. And in fact, whenever that video was released of him in the bus, I thought it was exactly what Texas needed. Texas had gotten far too accustomed to this mindset that because they were Texas, because they had recruited well, they could almost just coast into some games and win off of talent alone. And though there were times where that was the case, you're not going to win consistently off of that methodology. And it's good to see coaches come into Texas and really work to try and change that. Bo Davis is a big reason why. No nonsense guy through and through, has found success at every level he's been at, and is a really solid recruiter on the trail. It makes complete sense why a Dominic McKinley would be interested in playing for a Bo Davis. But now we have to look across the aisle. Understand that as great of a defensive line coach as Bo Davis is, true, and as great as a recruiter as he is, also true, Todd Bates is on the other side of this. And Todd Bates has orchestrated some defensive lines that were imperative to the success of the defense at Clemson. Multiple defenses that ranked as the #1 scoring defenses in the nation. A lot of that came off the backbone of Todd Bates' defensive line. And Bates just landed the second highest prospect of his career in David Stone, giving him a lot of momentum. So you have two fantastic defensive line coaches, two fantastic defensive line recruiters, and the cherry on top is that the two programs, Texas and Oklahoma, are bitter rivals, giving us even more intrigue into what's already a fascinating recruiting battle. I mean, we're talking about a quasi five-star kid here looking outside of his own state, being Louisiana, a state that we talk about all the time, is traditionally very difficult to recruit in. You're talking about the #1 player in the state of Louisiana choosing between bitter rivals that will be moving to the SEC and taking a top 5 rivalry in college football to the SEC. I mean, what more could we ask for, guys? Seriously. Now, this battle has been super interesting. From what I understand, Texas was positioning themselves really well, but Oklahoma has really been continuing to chip away at Dominic McKinley, and they have put in fantastic work here. This is going to be a photo finish, but I told you earlier there was a third team that I'm hearing whispers on, and that's Texas A&M. Now, typically, if I was to hear that there was two teams really surging for a prospect and the decision date was a few days away, and now there's a third team getting involved, I would be less inclined to really believe that third team had a shot. And certainly I believe it would be a long shot for Dominic McKinley to land at Texas A&M. It would surprise me. But we also need to understand what Texas A&M has done on the defensive line. And they recruit the defensive line as well as anybody in the nation. And so because of that, because of who their defensive line coach is, because of the way they have historically recruited the defensive line over the past few seasons, I do find it is worth mentioning that Texas A&M is chipping away in this battle. How much so, I can't tell you. Once again, I'm no insider. I'm just somebody who reads the tea leaves. So there are some people that have a far greater insight into this than I do. But I do feel like it's necessary to at least float Texas A&M as a possibility if their name is attached to this because of the work they have done in the past. Though I will be very clear here, if you were asking me, I think Texas A&M would come in third right now. If the three teams were OU, Texas, Texas A&M, I think A&M comes in third. But this is going to be a fantastic battle. Whoever lands Dominic McKinley is getting a fantastic defensive lineman. If we look at the Texas Longhorns, that's an area where they're really trying to shore up in this class, and they're going to battle against the Oklahoma Sooners for multiple top prospects. I mean, we're talking Dominic McKinley right now. Another name we're going to talk about probably next week is Danny Okoye, and that's a 3-team battle that's going to be interesting, really a 4-team battle that's fascinating. For Danny Okoye, you're talking Oklahoma, you're talking Texas, you're talking Alabama, you're talking Tennessee. That's going to be interesting. But for Dominic McKinley, this feels like a 2-team race. Now, I don't know the exact details of what the situation is with LSU, but typically when you're talking about the #1 player in the state of Louisiana, you'd think that LSU would have a stranglehold on making sure that guy didn't get out of the state. One thing we've talked about is several of the recruiters that McKinley has had on his trail no longer work with LSU. Coach Philip Lindsay had to take a leave of absence from the team due to health concerns. Hopefully he recovers and is back sooner rather than later. We're all thinking and praying for you, Coach. But other than that, they've had some turnover along that defensive front in the coaching department. That was something that I was interested in, but me sitting here from the outside looking in, I thought to myself, surely it's a 5-star defensive lineman. It's the #1 player in your state. Surely if you're Brian Kelly, you're not just sending your defensive line coaches after him. You're sending everybody. You are full court pressing Dominic McKinley. I don't know that that's the case. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not the case, but I don't know that that is the case because as time has gone on, as those coaches are no longer with LSU, this seems to be more and more of a race coming between the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. So this is a battle we're going to talk far more about tomorrow. We're going to talk more about it on Friday, but I think Oklahoma is really trying to chip away and use the momentum of David Stone to create the snowball effect, something we talk about all the time. Texas is trying to do something very analogous with the commitment of Colin Simmons, trying to translate that into the snowball effect. And Texas is looking at a situation where if they can successfully land Dominic McKinley, they feel really good about their chances landing Kobe Black. And if you can nab Kobe Black, Colin Simmons, Dominic McKinley, all in a recruiting class, that's going to be something we have to watch. Rob says A&M's DL coach died. Yes, that's true. No doubt. That's super unfortunate. A&M is still one of those teams, man, that they've just recruited that defensive line coach position so well. I'm interested to see how they mitigate that, but I do think it still is pertinent to talk about A&M, especially whenever we're talking about defensive line battles, just because they've pulled so many resources to go after those guys, and it's going to be interesting to see. Let's see. Already decided over a month ago, according to some article. Possibly. He easily could have. Who knows? That's what makes these recruiting battles so fun. Hitting some comments right now. Barbecue Bro says 2024 will be insane. The SEC will be so much fun to watch. You hit the nail on the head here, Barbecue. I mean, you're talking about a collection of some of the biggest brands in college football. Already, when you think of the biggest brands in college football, if you're thinking which conference houses them, and maybe I'm biased here, and if I am, please chat, keep me honest, right? That's why I have told all of you where my biases lie, so that you guys can keep me honest, and this is a symbiotic relationship. But whenever I think of the best brands in college football, don't get me wrong, all respect given to the Big Ten, they have got a lot of history there. When you look at the SEC, I mean, you look at Tennessee, you look at Georgia, who doesn't have the national championship success that so many people might think, but man, if they haven't been a consistent team in college football. You have Alabama. It's impossible to argue with what they do. And now you add in Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, at the point where you add in Texas and Oklahoma, I don't think that there is an argument at all that the SEC has the largest collection of brands in the nation. I don't think that that's a debate in the least. Big Ten, great collection of brands, but the SEC, geez, going to be awesome to see. Van says, agreed. The SEC is going to be must-watch nearly every game. Imagine if Florida State and Miami decided to join. Van, I have been saying forever there are three teams that if you told me right now the SEC can go out there and get, I would be moved by it. Clemson, Miami, and Florida State. Now, the reason is simple. I think that Clemson is a quasi-SEC team, right? I think if I had a bunch of SEC fans in the chat, they would be like, Clemson is probably as close to the SEC as you can be without being in the SEC. I think that's a fair summary of the Clemson Tigers. They're an ACC team, but like with Brent Venables, Dabo, Sweeney, they very much well embodied like an SEC mindset of physicality. We're going to crash bodies at you. We are going to make this not fun. And in the process, we're going to have a blast. Clemson would come in, instantly give you more legitimacy in terms of rivalry power, having that Clemson-South Carolina rivalry. And then you look at the state of Florida. UCF goes to the Big 12, which personally I think is a fantastic move for UCF. I think it's a fantastic move for the Big 12. I think Yormack really deserves some applause on that. Chris, I know that hurts to hear because Yormack said some wild stuff this past week, really like a scorned ex, which I get. Like, guys, it's one thing. It's good to see that your commissioner is a fan, right? Like there's part of me that's like, okay, Yormack is talking like a fan, which is great because I don't think that we have enough people who genuinely love college football or a fan of college football in positions of decision-making power. But you can't say that, right? And especially not after the day before you just sent the teams in Big 12 guidelines on professionalism. You can't then go say that after you've just sent people guidelines and professionalism. I digress. I do think that the addition of UCF was a fantastic addition. You're talking about a massive alumni body, a massive student body, a team that really has been good. And now they get to go to the Big 12 when the Big 12 was reeling. I thought that was a great move. Chris says he's a bum too. Yeah, like I said, man, And we talked about this. I don't understand the comments. I don't understand why you say them, but that is what it is. If I'm looking at Florida State, Miami, why wouldn't you want the Florida schools in the SEC? I mean, Florida is one of the most loaded states with talent year in, year out. The SEC is going to recruit it no matter what. But Florida State's a massive brand. Miami's a massive brand. If you can get them in the SEC, you do so. Now, whether Miami and Florida would do that, we'll see. But, I mean, there's no question that it would be great for the SEC, in my opinion. No question at all. Barbecue says, I heard Sankey doesn't want Miami. Maybe. I haven't heard anything like that, Barbecue, but also, like, my mind has been everywhere, right? So I honestly, I haven't been too keyed in on SEC expansion, more keyed in on ACC expansion, and even then more keyed in on Florida State specifically as opposed to Miami. But look, that could very well be it. Clemson is built like an SEC institution. I think Miami is helped by recruiting in the SEC, and Florida State is already building strong right now. Completely agree, Van. Completely agree. Gut says I didn't like him even before he made those comments. Fair enough. Fair enough. I will say, though, if you are a fan of the Big 12, he did a good job in terms of just going out and being aggressive. That's the one thing I will give Yormack. And I think it's easy for me to say that right now because, and if someone comments that he did the bare minimum, you're not wrong, right? Like, he had to keep the conference alive. The only way to keep the conference alive was to shift, to adapt, to get more teams. So you're not wrong, but we also saw the Pac-12 sit on their hands and do nothing. And their conference is gone. So, yeah, look, good job keeping the conference together, Yormack. Great job there. I love the brand you added in. I truly do. You get the holy war in the Big 12, which doesn't replicate the rivalry of Texas, Oklahoma, but you do get a rivalry that is going to move people. Utah, BYU, I think that's great. I love that. You get in Colorado, I think that's fantastic. UCF, I think, is awesome. Houston, awesome. But it doesn't make up for what you lost. Odd Future says the state of Florida will get rated like hell if the remaining teams join the SEC more than Texas gets rated. Yeah, but it's already happening, Odd. That's already happening. I mean, it was a few years ago that I made a video talking about how Florida has got to shore up their recruiting because even if Florida left, and this isn't going to happen, but even if Florida left and was to join the ACC, right, and the ACC gets their deal together, all the SEC teams are still going to be in the state of Florida. Like, they are still going to camp out there. At the point where you have IMG right there, at the point where you're bordering so many other states, they're going to be in Florida. Now, you're right. That would just open up the floodgates. But my question is, are the floodgates already open to the point of no return? I don't know. It is an interesting discussion to have. Chris, thank you for the 5. He says, if the ACC folds, where does UNC go? Would be a sneaky good addition for the SEC, but a no-brainer for the Big Ten. Thoughts? This is the team that has always given me the most pause to just think about, because I think they'd be a fantastic addition to the SEC, but I just have this feeling like they would end up Big Ten. I just, for whatever reason, and I think I read something once where they would probably end up Big Ten. I'd love to get them in the SEC, especially if Drake May was still there, because Drake May is must-see TV. Mac Brown it's been really fun watching him at North Carolina. There's no doubt about it. I'm super interested to see what they do this week. In fact, the one game nobody's talking about, that we talked about this on yesterday, people asked me what game is not getting the attention it's deserved. Easily, the game for me, Chris, is North Carolina, South Carolina. You're talking Spencer Rattler, Drake May, and we've heard Beamer talking Spencer Rattler's finally found his confidence. And Chris, I know you're a Spencer guy, and there's no denying what Spencer can do if the confidence is there, if he's feeling himself. The ability is never what anybody has questioned with Spencer. Now you're trotting that out game one. I mean, that's going to be fantastic. But I do think that it would be an addition for the Big Ten if UNC was to leave. But I would really want them to go to the SEC. It'd be my preference they go SEC, but I just think they'd go Big Ten. Van says, Ty, I don't want to derail your topics, but give me an honest take on Colorado and Coach Prime. I personally hope he builds them up, but I see many detractors. What do you think? Patience. That's what he needs. We also need to remember that this was a team that went 1-11 last year. And yes, Coach Prime hit the transfer portal. He completely revamped the team. But now you're talking about a team that's patchwork, right? So Coach Prime was in between a rock and a hard place no matter what he did. One thing we need to understand, a harsh reality of college football, and it's a harsh reality that we don't talk enough about. Guys like Coach Prime, they're brought in there to win games. And the flip side of that is if he was to maintain the team he had, take 7 years to get them into a position to where they could do something, he'd have been fired before that. Because the powers that be at Colorado would have looked at him and said, we brought you in here to win games, and we don't feel like that's happening. He had to make bold moves. So I understand why he did it. He had to make bold moves. But that being said, now you're in a situation where your whole team is patchwork. They haven't been together a year. I mean, these guys haven't been together 8 months. Some of them haven't been together 5 months. So do I think they will be a better football team than last year? Yeah, I think they're going to be a better football team. I think some of the players alone they got are going to be massive. In fact, they just got a linebacker from Texas who transferred from Texas, from Arizona State, was dismissed, and now he's with Colorado. He could be a huge addition to that team. I mean, you're now looking at an area where you could have Dominic McKinley and that young man from Texas as your two inside linebackers. That's a lot of ability. Dominic McKinley coming from Alabama, having played some running back there. Van, I don't need to tell you that. A linebacker that Dominic McKinley is a linebacker who has so much athletic ability that when all the running backs got hurt at Alabama, they asked him, want to play running back? And he did. So he's super talented, really excited for him. On the offensive side of the ball, Travis Hunter alone is better than any weapon they had last year, but then you also add in a Jimmy Horn Jr. You look at some of the pieces they've added in. My biggest question for Colorado comes, what is your offensive line going to look like? Because I do like Brett Bartolone as your wide receiver coach. He put up big numbers as Jackson State's offensive coordinator last year. Coach Prime takes him with him. And to be able to keep a guy that was your offensive coordinator and make him a wide receiver coach, I mean, what a win for Coach Prime, but it's also Sean Lewis coming in there, the offensive coordinator that was the offensive coordinator for Kent State, an offense that has been so good for so long. So yeah, look, they're going to be better. But we also need to understand there are some teams in the Pac that are going to be better than we typically think of Pac teams. I said this last year. We all laugh at the Pac-12, and I get it. We point, we laugh, we throw some stones, we may poke them with the stick. It's all in good fun. But at the same time, last year, they had some firepower, man. Like some real firepower. Utah was a really solid team. USC's defense wasn't good, but their offense, I mean, let's be honest, they could go toe-to-toe with anybody in the nation. Whether they would win or not remained to be seen, but they had great offense. You looked at Oregon. Oregon got dragged up and down a football field by Georgia week 1 and then really got it together after that and became a solid football team. You looked at Washington with Michael Penix Jr., and I've said this time and time again, I think Michael Penix Jr. might have a bit of a grievance with the Heisman voting committee that he wasn't included. He was sensational last year. And so when you look at Colorado's record, they've got some tough games. Starting with TCU, I get Max Duggan's not there, but TCU did really good work in the transfer portal. They did some good work recruiting, getting some guys in. And then on top of that, they have the continuity of coaching. So, I mean, look, it's going to be interesting to see how they mitigate the loss of not having Duggan. Duggan was just such a gamer for them, right? And I get it. They like the quarterbacks they have, but Duggan was a gamer through and through. Like another quarterback we're going to talk about here very soon, just a gamer. The type of guy that if he's on your college team, it makes sense when he wins a locker room. So I think it's going to take time, Van. I'm rooting for him, but we need to understand that team was in shambles. They've made some good moves. But what's going to be very important is how they recruit in 2024. The transfer portal is still an option. It still needs to be utilized, but you use the transfer portal as your patchwork to get in new faces year 1, to try and build a new foundation year 1. I think now you build off of that foundation through recruiting. I've always said this. I don't know that you can completely win a national championship building through the transfer portal. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying right now, over the sample sizes I have, it shows me that you're better served using the transfer portal as patchwork as opposed to a building mechanism. That being said, once again, I know sometimes it's got to be annoying, so I apologize for all of you that I will ping pong, but I always argue with myself. And I think that's the legal training I have, trying to find what I believe is the best answer. As much as I do believe that you don't use the transfer portal to completely redo a team, it's easy saying that sitting here when I didn't inherit a team that's 1-11 and my job is on the line. So Shadow, and I wanted to hit this, Shadow, because I get what you're saying, and I think there's an interesting conversation to be had here. Shadow says, no, don't give him patience. He says he's going to win now, says he's brought that mentality. How are you going to let him off the hook if he goes 3-9 because Prime thinks he's going to be better than that? Because that's coach speak, Shadow. We see that time and time again. That's coach speak. He is hyping up prospects to be interested in Colorado, Shadow. This is a psychological game. That's why. To me, that's very simple. Right? It's the same as saying for a coach that inherits a program that wasn't that good, oh, we feel like we have the guys to create a winning, right? Like it's all different variations of coach speak. Right now, you have to put yourself in the position of Coach Prime. He's inheriting a team that was terrible last year, that has been terrible for years, and his job's on the line. If he doesn't win, he's gone. So you're going to do whatever you can to position your team in a favorable light to those from the outside looking in. The people he's really concerned about aren't you or I, it's recruits. And whether we like it, whether you like it, whether I like it, it is interesting recruits, right? I mean, how many 5-star defensive backs has he flipped? Now, we can say that's an isolated incident, but at a certain point, for you to be able to do that, your pitch is carrying some type of weight. So I hear what you're saying, and there's a reason why I wanted to talk about it, but I do think we also need to understand that that's coach speak. He's speaking to recruits. He's saying, oh, we're going to be good because he's trying to tell recruits the hype with us is legitimate. Keep us interested. Because right now, Shadow, let's be very honest here, right? If he's not building up Colorado as a favorable destination, why would a recruit pick a Colorado? Let's say there's a wide receiver. Why would he pick a Colorado over a Texas? Right? So you've got to sell yourself. And that's what he's doing. He's doing what he was hired for, selling the program. So I have no problem with that, Shadow, if that makes sense. I'm really interested in hearing from you there. Really interested in what you think about that. But to me, it's far less about the literal aspect of what you don't think he's needed to. Maybe not, but I'll ask you this question. Has he garnered the attention of recruits? Right? Like he flipped Dylan Edwards, a blue chip running back. He wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for Coach Prime being there. A Kermani McLean, so fair point, right? It doesn't have to be for us, but the message was never for us. Right? And I think that's the one thing we need to understand. That message was never for us. Right? It was a letter that was penned for everybody to read, but the recipient of that letter was the recruits. But was it, Shadow? Was it? To me, the hype started when he walked in there and said, I'm bringing my Louis. That's when the hype started. So to me, it's all the same conversation. It's a continuation of the exact same thing that we saw from Rip. Okay, now this is a fair point, Shadow. I love this argument right here. This is a great point, and I grant you this one. Yes, but he got a 5-star to an HBCU. Was some hype not there for Prime already? You're 100% on this point. There was hype, but we now need to ask, how was the hype generated? And it was more or less the same exact thing we're seeing right now. Coach Prime being Coach Prime, unapologetic and himself. So you're right, there was the hype, but the reason we didn't hear about it is because he wasn't on a Power 5 stage. Now he's on a Power 5 stage, so everything is just magnified so much more. That hype was largely by him being himself, unapologetic and brash, bold. It's not for everybody, and I completely understand you, Shadow. I think you're definitely onto something, and everything you're saying is rooted in a logical reality, no doubt about that. But I also think there's two sides to look at the same coin. And I think that's an interesting point to think about. Both Texas and OU have done a great job recruiting the defensive line for 2024 class. 100%. 100%. I do believe it will be Texas for McKinley. Hey, look, and that's a completely logical take right now. Honestly, if an OU fan right now said, I think it's OU for McKinley, tough to argue, especially over the last, dare I say, 36 hours. I mean, I don't know exactly what's gone on, but there's been a shift in the last 36 hours. To what degree, I have no idea. But I also think it's perfectly reasonable for a Texas fan to come in here and say, hey, I feel like we're going to land Dom McKinley. Yeah, no doubt. You two schools are going at it, and it's unbelievable to watch. Chicken in here, over 100 people in here, and only 10 likes. Come on. I do what I can. Guys, if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button. It hits us out a lot, or helps us out a lot. Don't hit me. Shadow says, you can tell I'm battered by my previous Texas coaches. No doubt, Shadow. And like I said, everything you're saying is rooted in reality. I completely understand where you're coming from. But then there's also the business side of college football, and that business side can get real uncomfortable, real unpleasant, real quick. Checkbooks are open. Ty, who do you think the backup is from Miami since David Stone committed to Oklahoma, or do you think Miami still has a chance to flip him? Look, I'm not going to say any team is out of the running for any recruit anywhere. Recruiting is far too fluid. Even me being an Alabama fan, right? The kid that Alabama must land in this class is Julian Saban. He's been my must-land prospect. The other one was DeMarcus Riddick. Now, DeMarcus Riddick ended up flipping from Georgia to Auburn, and whenever he did, he was saying how he likes the environment there. He's not as concerned with winning immediately, more concerned about helping a rebuild. If a kid comes out and says, hey, I want to be the first group to really get this off the ground, there's not much you can say to that if you're an Alabama coach. You can tell him, hey, this is how we develop, this is how we do this. But if he's interested in a rebuild, like if that means something to him, that's completely reasonable. Julio Jones was interested in that whenever he had committed to Alabama. Nick Saban telling him, be the guy that turns it around, and he was. So that's legitimate. Miami is going to keep after David Stone, right? The same way that Alabama is going to keep recruiting Julian Saban, because Julian Saban could be flipped at any point. Now, do I believe it will happen? No. Do I believe Miami will flip David Stone? No, probably not. But that's not impossible, Anthony. I mean, recruiting is recruiting. Mario Cristobal is Mario Cristobal. He's a great recruiter, a great recruiter. So it'd be naive for me to say there's a 0% chance David Stone doesn't go to Miami. He enjoyed Miami. He enjoyed the coaches. His family likes the area. It'd be naive to say it's a 0% chance. That being said, it is an uphill climb. Now, who do you turn your attention to thereafter? That's interesting, because the defensive line members are flying off the board right now. And if you're Miami, you got to turn your attention to someone, which is part of the reason why last year I was so adamant that Alabama needed to land James Smith and Peter Wood. They went 50% on that. And unfortunately, Peter Woods is at Clemson and looks like he's Himothy. From everything I've heard, Peter Woods looks like he is going to be a problem for the Tigers this year. Great addition for them. Really wish he would have been with the Crimson Tide. Who do you think will get McKinley? Ooh, putting me on the spot, BL. Love it. Love it. Who do I think will get McKinley? You know, if you asked me this yesterday, I would have said Texas. And I think it's close still. And so in that light, I will say Texas, but I will say this, BL. Every day that goes on, Oklahoma is surging. And what was if we were thinking that yesterday the gap was like this, I think the gap is this now. I think this is such a tight recruiting battle. I mean, such a tight recruiting battle. It's truly a coin flip. What he really thought. What do you mean, Okie? But no, I think right now Texas is in a good position. That being said, it's not going to surprise me wherever he goes, right? It's not. But right now I'd pick Texas. I am holding out, though, that I very well may change that tomorrow or Thursday, just because from what I was being told from Monday to now has changed so much. Oklahoma is surging, ladies and gentlemen. They are surging in this. This is a battle. And that, BL, makes this so much fun. Now, people are saying that the Oklahoma depth chart is out. Now, we are going to talk about that. And before we do that, Anthony says, Ty, do you think McKinley shocks everybody and chooses the school that nobody's been talking about? Let's say hypothetically he chooses in Miami. That'd be huge for y'all. That'd be huge for y'all. But I just don't think so, Anthony. I just don't. McKinley is a different type of cat, man. I mean, he's really like an old school cat where he's not too pressed about the whole media attention. That's really not for him from what I've gathered. He's about his business, right? He's more of the type that would like to walk in there with a briefcase, suited up, and yeah, I think that's about the situation, right? I don't think that that's him. I think he's very forthright, but I also don't think he's a media darling per se, where he's jumping at every opportunity to talk to the media. I think he likes his quiet. So I just don't know. I don't know. Not discounting Aggie. Unfortunate. I agree. Odd future, I completely agree. If you're asking me the two teams that are battling for McKinley, I'd give it a 51%, 51 to 49% Texas OU right now. That's truly, guys, how close I have this. Like, if you were forcing me to pick, that's the degree of separation I would take. 51% to 49%. That's what we're talking here. This is going to be a must-see battle, which is beautiful. But if there was a third team, unfortunately, Anthony, I don't think it's Miami. I'd love to eat crow. I think it'd be so cool to come on here Saturday or Friday evening and be like, boy, did I blow that one. I got that one wrong. He's going Miami. That'd be awesome. Maybe not awesome for Shadow or Odd Future or Rob or Okie. I don't know that y'all would like that, but you would like that. I would think it was really cool. Yeah. Ran, I don't know where you heard that, but I can pretty much will confidently say that's not true. In fact, there's a team you listed that I can pretty much will confidently say isn't as deep in this as I think is being held out. Is even I thought it was. From what I've been told, this is a Texas OU battle. This is a Texas OU battle. On 3 said it. Yeah. Look, maybe, but that's not what I've been told. Showtime 80 says, late to the discussion, is there a commitment date for this guy? Friday, September 1st, Showtime. Going to be a great battle up until... And if you were late, Showtime, I'll give you a quick synopsis. People have asked where I think Dominic McKinley goes. I think it's a 2-team battle, Texas, Oklahoma right now. If you had to make me answer where I think he goes right now, and I did say I hold the right to change my pick because I think Oklahoma's really putting in good work, I'd give Texas the edge right now. But understand that if you made me give a percentage split, it'd be 51-49. I think Oklahoma's putting in fantastic work. So yeah, there's been noise since that 0-3 video. I'm not sure which video, but yeah, no, that'd be the only source I'd heard say that OU wasn't in this. Guts and Rob or Ran. That's the only source I've ever heard say OU is not in the battle for Dom McKinley, which is interesting. But every other source that I know of that I've talked to says opposite. So look, 0-3's got great sources. They do great work, but I'm going to stand on what I've been told. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's an opportunity to learn. It is what it is. But the thing is, the team he picks Friday, they'll have to fight. No doubt. Odd future, if I could pin this. This is a comment, ladies and gentlemen, that should be pinned on every recruiting battle ever. Ever, from now on out. If you win a battle, you don't stop recruiting him. It's part of the reason why even now I've maintained the most important person for Alabama to continue recruiting is Julian Sayin. Yeah, Rand, I don't know, man, because I'm getting a totally different thing. And in fairness, I'm not going to... There was some sources the other day that also said Eli Bowen had no interest at Oklahoma because Peyton Bowen wasn't happy there and that he was Texas. There's a clip of that in a video. He's at Oklahoma. I don't know where that came from, but just to kind of paint the picture, recruiting is fluid. It's super fluid. If OU goes 6 and 7, Stone is, yeah, look, you got to show up. Texas shows up, the commits will come. True. Let's talk about the Alabama depth chart real quick, because Nick Saban didn't release a depth chart, but that's what I'm here to do. Talk about the projected depth chart of where Alabama could go. Now, I've given this some thought, and I have put together a list that I feel fairly confident in, and I'm actually really excited because when the game gets here, I'm going to compare and contrast where I have it as compared to where the charts are. So right now, the projected Bama depth chart, I have quarterback Jalen Milroe. I have him being the starter. I said this the other day. I think he offers the most. He's the most tenured in the room. I think he's got the deepest skill set in terms of if his arm is right, he's got a cannon attached to his body. And if the passing game just isn't working, he's the only quarterback that possesses game-breaking ability outside the passing game. Buckner is a mobile quarterback. Ty Simpson is a mobile quarterback. Neither of them are Jalen Milroe. So Milroe, my quarterback one. In terms of the running back room, ladies and gentlemen, this is fluid, super fluid. If you told me to pick a order, Jace is running back 1, Roy Dell, I'd have it 2, Jam Miller at 3, Justice Haynes coming in at 4. But once again, that order is going to be fluid throughout the year. I think they're really going to ride a hot hand. So the running back room, there's a lot of ability there. If you're asking me about tight ends, I think we could see some 12 personnel. So a little bit like the running back room, you could have some multiple tight end sets. So at any given time, 2 of these names could be the starter. And in fact, any given game, any one of these names, if they are rolling out just simple 11 personnel, could be the tight end starter. I'm talking CJ Dippre. I'm talking Amari Niblack. I'm talking Danny Lewis, any variation of those 3. At wide receiver X, we're going to start with Jermaine Burton, but Kendrick Law is a name to watch. Kendrick Law, I think, provides a spark to this offense. I think he's got a really deep skill set, and if Jermaine Burton is not finding his stride, Kendrick Law is going to be hot on his heels. Kendrick Law is a name to be excited about. At wide receiver Z, I have a split. Benson or Brooks. I think Benson has an ability that you just can't keep off the team, but Ja'Cory Brooks has proved to be so clutch when the moments have called. I think back to that Auburn game a few years ago, one of the greatest moments I can remember of the previous 5 years in college football, where Bryce Young looks at the Auburn defense, looks at the clock, and just smiles before unloading a strike to Ja'Cory Brooks for the touchdown, sending them into overtime. So Brooks is super clutch, hoping this is the year where he really gets it together. In the slot, I have Isaiah Bond. Now, outside of Isaiah Bond, you're looking at Kobe Prentice. You're looking at a Cole Adams. You're looking at an Emmanuel Henderson. There's a lot you could do there. You could even slide a Malik Benson into the slot if need be, because I truly believe Malik Benson has the ability to play every single wide receiver position and be proficient about it. Now to the area I'm so excited about, the offensive line. Left tackle, ladies and gentlemen, we have a true freshman, Caden Proctor, up and ready to go, and I have heard he has been awesome. At left guard, I think, and there was some smoke about this, I truly do think that Booker probably will move from right guard to left guard, with Caden Proctor being a true freshman, and Booker showing last year during his true freshman season, his ceiling at guard is nutty high. He is going to be a very good offensive lineman for years to come. You move him over to the left side, have him assist Caden Proctor, let him get acclimated to the college game. I like that. At center, you have McLaughlin. I think he's been the best center for Alabama. I think he is the way to go. Right guard is where it gets interesting, because you have Terrence Ferguson, who I do believe has ability, but you also have Darian Dalcourt. And Darian Dalcourt has played well at the guard position. At center, I prefer Seth McLaughlin. But at guard, Dalcourt has showed he's a player. He has experience, and I think that could prove very helpful, especially when we look in some of the offensive line. Some of the offense doesn't have that experience. And beside Dalcourt, easy, we have Latham, right tackle. So there's your offense from my side. That's my projected offense. Once again, quarterback, you have Jalen. Running back is a committee, but look for Jace, Roydell, Jam, Justice, and obviously Richard Young. Tight end, once again, committee, Dupree, Niblack, Lewis. Wide receiver X, Burton. Wide receiver Z, either Benson, Brooks, slot, Bond. Left tackle, Proctor. Left guard, Booker. Center, McLaughlin. Right tackle, Dalcourt. Right tackle, Latham. Defense, we get into the defensive front. We got Justin Eboigbe in for a big year. Was having a monster year last year before the neck injury against Arkansas. He's back fully healthy. I cannot understate what a big deal I think that is for the Alabama defensive line. Alabama's defensive line has still been good, but they have not been the vaunted Alabama defensive fronts so many have become so accustomed to. Years prior, I mean, you looked and you were naming 4 or 5 guys deep on that Alabama defensive line. Over the few years, you've been naming 1 to 2 deep on that Alabama defensive line. This year, I think, is the start of trying to get more back to having multiple names you count on, but it's going to require people stepping up. It is going to require a Smith stepping up. It's going to require a Tim Keenan stepping up. It's going to require more consistency out of a Tim Smith. And Jaheim Otis, I think, is in for a big year. But defensive end, Justin DeBoigbe, that's a really big help for the Alabama defensive front, his veteran presence. Defensive line, Otis during his sophomore season is going to be a household name in college football. He is that good. Also hearing great things about Tim Keenan. Excited about that. The other defensive end position, let's look for Tim Smith to really have a big year. He has the ability. The ability has flashed, almost like Byron Young a few years ago. For any Bama fans watching, Byron Young would be a guy you turn on the film, you watch, and he would fly off the screen, but the consistency wasn't there. If Tim Smith can get that consistency, it's going to be a really fun player. Behind him, can we see a Damon Payne Jr.? Something we have to watch. I don't think the outside linebackers require much thought at all. You're talking Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell. That is what it is. At inside linebacker, this is where it gets interesting. I have Deontay Lawson at one and Jahad Campbell at the other. Tresman Marshall is a name that transferred in from Georgia and has shown a lot. I think he's a very, very gifted player and would not be surprised at all to see him take this spot. But Jahad Campbell, in my opinion, is a guy that has athletic ability that is impossible to keep off of a football field. I think the duo of Lawson and Campbell provides so much athleticism, something that Alabama would really look forward to. So Jahad Campbell is the guy for me I'm watching to start next to Deontay Lawson. The defensive backfield is where it gets really interesting. I think Alabama feels better about this defensive backfield than they have in quite some time. And because of that, there's a lot of theory crafting that can be done. But let's look at the way I've theory crafted this. Cornerback 1, we have Kool-Aid. I don't think anybody's batting an eyelash at that. Cornerback 2, we have Terrion Arnold. Now, the interesting thing about Terrion Arnold, he has got the ability to play any position in the secondary and play it at a high level. I mean, play it and get drafted out of that position. He truly has so much versatility as a defensive back. It is actually really fun to see. A guy that came in last year and really showed that he needs to be a force in this Alabama defense. So if I'm looking at this, I'd put Kool-Aid, Terrion Arnold as your 2 cornerbacks. At one safety, Devontae Smith was really surging through camp, but his injury has derailed that a little bit. How severe his injury is, I'm not 100% certain, but look for Key to shore up that safety position. He has the experience, very coveted player coming out the transfer portal, chose Alabama. Very excited to see what happens there. And then finally, Caleb Downs at your other safety position. I think that's a no-brainer. If I was choosing a true freshman for Alabama that was going to set college football on fire, Caleb Downs is an easy pick. I think that's a superstar in college football waiting to happen. Then we get to the star position, and this is where I've ping-ponged back and forth multiple times because Malachi Moore is finally healthy. If you go back and watch Malachi Moore's freshman year, he was really solid with the Crimson Tide, made a lot of really good plays, but he sustained a back injury. And for those of you that know, back injuries can be real tough to come back from. I mean, really, really bad injuries to come back from because they're so easy to retweak right as you're at the home stretch of your healing process. One wrong move. I mean, seriously, getting out of bed wrong, and now all of a sudden you're right back at the beginning of your recovery. Hopefully Malachi Moore is healthy, but there is a name I wonder if he's just too good to keep off the field. A name that, in my opinion, had the best play of A-Day on defense, and that's Earl Little Jr., where Earl Little Jr. was following a deep crossing route going right across the end zone, a notoriously difficult route to cover, especially going from the far side all the way across the face of the offense into the far side pylon of the end zone. Not only did he cover it exceptionally, he had one of the most athletic interceptions I've seen in years. I think Earl Little may be too good to keep off the field. So, defensive projected depth chart, defensive end, Boybe. Defensive line, I'm looking at Otis. Other defensive end, give me Tim Smith. My outside linebackers, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell. Easy peasy. Inside linebackers, this is where a lot of thought will come in. This is where I will get some disagreement with me, and I welcome that because I think that the other options are just as valid. You have Deontay Lawson, Shahad Campbell. Cornerback 1, Kool-Aid. Cornerback 2, Arnold. I think those are very easy. 2 safeties, Kean Downs, Star. I think I'm going to go with Earl Little. Malachi Moore, though, would not surprise me in the least. Malachi, if he rolls out there, it's going to be great to see. I hope he's healthy. The sky is the limit when he is healthy, but Earl Little may just be too good to keep off the field. So that's my projected Alabama depth chart. Let's see some comments because I was not looking at the stream or comments while this happened. Let's see. How many freshmen of any? Saban will start freshmen. I think this year, if you're looking at freshmen to start, Proctor at left tackle, Downs at safety. I think you could have 2 freshmen starting with multiple contributing. I think there will be a lot of freshmen contributing, Jordan, but right off the rip, yeah, going to be interesting. All right, yeah, now I'm pretty much caught up. We're going to talk about the OU depth chart here in a little bit. We'll go a little bit longer today than the hour because I didn't do the evening stream last night. So, yeah. This is why we can't hang on to commitment dates until ink hits paper. 100%, Willow, 100%. You keep recruiting until they... In fact, Willow, we need to modify your statement a little bit because you're right. But your statement is 100% right 3 years ago. With the existence of the transfer portal, you keep recruiting these cats until the day they leave your school. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the situation, especially with how loose these tampering rules are. You got to keep recruiting these cats even when they're on your team. But you are 100% right. In the recruiting process, you must recruit until pen hits paper. Until pen hits paper. You have to be calling daily, semi-daily, whatever the recruit is comfortable with, because different strokes for different folks. Maybe a recruit says, hey, coach, you just need to hit me up 2 times a week and we're good. Any more than that's a little overbearing. Then hit him up 2 times a week. But you hit him up 2 times a week religiously until he signs. And even then you make sure he's good. Anthony says, Ty, as a Bama fan, does that scare you a little bit that Coach Saban refuses to release a depth chart to show fans who... No, not at all. Anthony, and I think the reason is we have to understand that Saban's the master psychologist in college football. Like Saban, he is a master psychologist, and not releasing a depth chart, once again, it's almost like we talked about with Coach Prime. The message of that was not for you or I. The message of that was for the team. He's still he's saying something to the team, so it doesn't worry me. Don't get me wrong, as a fan, I would love to have it, but it doesn't worry me. Rand says, as a Texas fan, didn't even know we were in on Bowen recruitment until he released his top 2. Yeah, for sure. Ty, do you feel as Simpson still has a lot of time to develop in terms of his passing? He's more of a Cam Newton. No, I think Ty Simpson is more of like a more athletic Jake Coker. And I know that's going to sound like a dig, but Jay Coker won a national championship. Ty Simpson has got ability. He's got a live arm. The one thing I will say for Ty Simpson is you need to play within yourself, right? Take what the offense gives you instead of trying to create superstar plays every time. I know you've got the arm, but take what the offense gives. Van says, shooting from the hip here because I don't think Ty Simpson ever starts a game at Bama and transfers with Julian Sayin coming in. Unfortunately, Van, look, it's a possibility. I don't want to ever discuss those possibilities, but it'd be foolish of me to ignore the possibility. We also need to understand Dylan Lonergan is for real. And if he's a true freshman that's already kind of made this battle a little bit more interesting, I think it could stand to reason that he could end up battling for quarterback 2. And I'm going to be honest, once again, it's tough to project where a quarterback comes in from high school. Julian Sayin could start year 1. He's one of those guys that has that ability. I mean, you look at him dotting people up. My boy Unfair in here says, oh, we're getting it daily. Yeah, man, with this week right here, got to. Killer Bees, Burton, Benson, Brooks. Yep. Bowen's recruitment mirrors Neto's little brother. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one, Odd Future. And Bontrue. Can't wait to see how good Proctor is in that Texas game. I can't either. Ran. Hopefully he has some freshman mistakes in that game. Hey, I hear you, man. I was hoping Banks would have some freshman mistakes, and that just did not happen. And I'm just hoping he can be somewhat of what Banks was for y'all, and will be great. Yeah, super excited about that game, Ran. That's a coin flip. Ty, serious question. Saban wants Bama to run the old school traditional bully ball this year. Is that offensive? No, look, you can still be effective with that. We just saw Georgia win a national championship running a balanced offense. I think that there's this notion that if you say you want to get back to like a bully ball, we tend to think that we're going to forego the pass. But what I think that means is we are going to be a more balanced offense. If I will say this, Odd Future, because you ask a very valid question. It would concern me a lot more if Bama didn't have Bryce Young last year. And let me explain why. Bama's coming off of a year where they asked Bryce to do basically everything offensively. And so hearing Saban say, hey, we feel like we put so much on our quarterback last year, we want to kind of step back from that and put more on our running game, put more on the easy passes, put more on rhythm instead of asking a quarterback to win it all for us. That actually comforts me. Now, had Bama been running a typical Bama offense and then Saban said this, yes, Odd, I think you would be onto something. And I would be a bit like, okay, cool, we'll see. But I think the context of why he said it is very important. And the reason he said it is because he's been very forthright. He's been very adamant. He feels like they asked a lot of Bryce, maybe too much of Bryce. And I agree. And I think this year is trying to almost correct for that. Great question, though. Because I myself have given that a lot of thought. I love that question. Ty, my receiver core at the start of the season for Alabama is Brooks at X, Preston at slot. Yeah, I think that's a great lineup. I just think 16 teams is a limit. I think 4 teams in the SEC. A&M and Georgia, for example. Yeah, David, no, this is a great point. I think that the SEC seriously needs to redo how they have the teams play each other, which is why I'm so interested in seeing what they are going to plan. But I think you're on a great point, David. I love the SEC. It is a disservice that we did not get that game more than we did. Let's be honest, because that would have been a great game, and we just didn't get it. Yeah, Willow, this is about what I'm thinking. How's Cole Adams? He's looked really, really, really good, T. In fact, I appreciate that, Rob, but I don't think there's any way that my depth chart's going to be better than Saban's, but I really appreciate that. T, Cole Adams has looked fantastic. In fact, I have been told that he has come in and really turned heads. In fact, don't be surprised if on the depth chart you see him notched as an option for punt return duty, which might not sound like a lot, but for a true freshman, for Saban to say, hey, I trust you doing that, especially when he was injured. Cole Adams was a great addition by Alabama. And I'm very sorry for any Oklahoma fans that hear, but Cole Adams has been very impressive thus far in camp. Really impressive. I just like that reality. Yeah, Kyle, we're going to get to that. I need to talk about this Utah-Florida preview. I need to give at least 10 minutes to that. And then we're going to extend this out. We are going to react to the Oklahoma depth chart, no doubt. Didn't want backups to think they're backups. Then he said they all know her. It's not so much that, Rob. It's the fact of cutting out the outside noise, right? That's been something Saban has been big on for years. And I think that he saw last year that the team was not cutting out the outside noise at all. I'll put it like this, guys. You had a team in Alabama that featured Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, that defensive front, and you heard the guys saying we were anxious going to play Tennessee. Excuse me? Jay, no offense. Tennessee was a great team last year. You're Alabama. Tennessee should be anxious to play you. You're anxious to play Tennessee. What have they done to Bama over the last? They have one win. You're anxious to go play Tennessee. They were a great team last year. They kicked the snot out of Alabama for most of the game until Alabama finally got it together and made it somewhat of a close game until Tennessee got the win. All well and fair to Tennessee. How are you anxious going to play Tennessee? Bama has owned that team. And we have leaders saying we were anxious going to play that game. So, Rob, I hear you. But once again, I think we go back to Saban being the master psychologist, and this is all a part of that. That the team last year did not cut out the outside noise well. At least in my opinion, they didn't. Yeah, no doubt. Manufactured drama. I also agree with this. I don't, it's just a depth chart. What's up, man? Oh, Shadow. Yeah, there were holding calls not get called on every side of that game last year. I've said this before. The officiating in that Texas Bama game for all sides was god awful. God awful. That was tough to watch. Real tough to watch. But it's going to be a great game this year. Great game. LJ says Oklahoma is not second from McKinley. Where are people getting? So I've heard a lot of different stuff, LJ, and unfair. He can probably say better than me, but there's been a lot changing in the previous few hours, 24, 36 hours. But no, look, let's be honest. LJ, Oklahoma's also been in this battle for a while. They've liked where they were. LSU is kind of, from what I've been told, they're trying to remain in it, but A&M is a team that's surging, but so too is Oklahoma, from what I've been told. Like I said, if you ask me right now, I would still pick Texas, but I've been told Oklahoma is really surging a lot in this, which I could be wrong, but that's just the information that's been passed on to me. Okay, let's go to Florida versus Utah because I do want to react to this Oklahoma depth chart being released. Florida versus Utah, preview and prediction. So last year, the Florida Gators got a win in one of the best games I've seen in a long time. I mean, you were talking about a game where they battled. In the last few minutes, Utah driving down the field, and then Florida gets an interception to clear out the game in Florida. I mean, you had players puking on the field, the whole 9 yards. Before I go deep into this, Jay, would you say it's fair to say OU is in second right now, or do you think I probably have that wrong? Because I have it as Texas 1, OU second, with A&M really surging right now. Let me know what you think about that. But I still do have Texas at number 1, but Oklahoma making some moves. I think Dominic McKinley is trying real hard, LJ. Real hard. But focusing back in on this Florida versus Utah, you had an awesome game last year. An unbelievable game last year. Came down to the wire. But this time they're not in Gainesville. They are in Utah. This is going to be an interesting game to watch because last year, one of the biggest reasons Florida found so much success is that Anthony Richardson was unbelievable in that game. I rewatched it yesterday and I only counted a few throws, a few plays where it looked like he was off. But most of the game, Anthony Richardson was making good decisions, making good plays, showing his athleticism, showing his arm. Whenever I look at this, though, there's a major question that comes, and that's the health of Cam Rising and the health of Grant Kuth. Kuth being the tight end, or Keithy, they have. If I am mispronouncing his name, I apologize. I think it's Keithy, and I don't know why I just said Kuth. But Keithy being the tight end they have, number 80, was unbelievable for them all last year. Went down with an ACL injury. Now, the reason why I bring that to your attention, last year, Utah was unbelievable out of 12 personnel. In fact, they based out of 12. I won't say they based, but they were out of 12 personnel a lot. And one of the reasons why they were out of 12 personnel so much is they had Dalton, Kincaid, and Keithy, and those two together were so tough to stop. Kincaid makes the move to the NFL. Now, I don't question Utah's ability to run the football. I like their running game. I like their running game a lot. What I do wonder, though, is what happens if Cam Rising isn't to go? Because if Cam Rising isn't to go, earlier we were talking about Max Duggan, and I called Max Duggan a gamer. And I was just like, that's just a quarterback that he rolls up his socks and he just goes out there and plays. He is a gamer. For college football, I mean, he's a fun quarterback to watch. Cam Rising's a lot the same way. where he is a scrappy gamer. He is going to play with a level of tenacity that you can't teach, a level of want to you can't teach. He's one of the more effective dual threat quarterbacks in the nation, a very experienced force for Utah right now. And this is a Utah team that's very well coached, very disciplined. But if you're Utah and you don't have Cam Rising as your starting quarterback, if he's out due to his ACL injury, if you don't have Keithy because he's out due to his ACL injury, and Dalton Kincaid is no longer there, Florida all of a sudden has so many options from Utah's offense eliminated. They're really only going to have to worry about the Florida rush attack. Florida will only really have to worry about the Utah rush attack. If Florida is able to key in on one aspect of Utah, and if Utah becomes one-dimensional, as much as I like Kyle Whittingham, as much as I think Utah is a team to watch in the pack, the health of their starting quarterback and maybe their best offensive weapon, that matters tremendously. Because there's an argument to be made that Dalton Kincaid was the best player for Utah last year. One of them, at least. If you're saying, Ty, it wasn't Kincaid, I think Keith has a higher ceiling. Keithy has a higher ceiling. Then that's fair, right? If you as a Utah fan believe that Keithy has a higher ceiling, that's well good. He is very talented, but if he's not available, then it matters not. Now you're without Kincaid. Now you're without him. You might be without Cam Rising. And the only question I've had for Utah's offense, what's the passing game going to look like? I know your running game is going to be good. It's going to be stout. I have no doubt about that. When tight ends are healthy, I love your tight ends. What is your passing game going to look like? And unfortunately, that was a question before the health of Cam Rising was a question, before the health of maybe your best offensive player was a question. And now when I look at the situation and I have to question the health of Cam Rising, I have to question the health of maybe your best offensive player, maybe the best player on your team, and Clark is no longer there, who was the best defensive player on the team last year. It's going to be tough for Utah. And this is a Utah team that I have a lot of faith in, that once they get a Cam Rising healthy, once they get their tight end healthy, they've got all the ability in the world. They're going to be a team that's must watch because Kyle Whittingham is maybe the most underappreciated head coach in college football. Not a big fan of his holy war comments. Not a big fan of that because I think y'all know how much I value rivalries in college football, but I'm a big Kyle Whittingham fan. Big Whittingham fan. And the reason is simple. Just look at what he's done. When you look at what he has done, it becomes very obvious. But I'm telling you guys right now, as much as Florida has to replace, and they have to replace a lot, that offense relied on Anthony Richardson last year. And maybe that will be good for Florida. Walking away from a situation where you're looking at your quarterback and saying, hey, the way we're going to win this football game is you being a freak. That's how we're going to win. Maybe getting away from that into a more formulaic scheme-based offense will be great. I certainly think it will. But if we were sitting here looking at this situation where Utah was healthy, fully healthy, and Florida was coming into this game, I would be more inclined to pick Utah to win this game, to avenge the loss they got last year. It was a close game last year. Anthony Richardson was sensational in the game last year, made big throws, made big plays on the ground with his legs. He's not there anymore. Now, where I do love Florida's ability is their running game. I really like the running backs Florida fields this year. Really a big fan of them. I think they have some wide receivers that are young, but are going to be very impressive. Really excited to see that. But I just keep going back and having to ask the question, if Utah doesn't have Cam Rising, if they don't have Keithy, and Dalton Kincaid is in the NFL, are you going to be able to have enough to beat Florida? I don't know the answer to that. And right now, if I'm operating under the assumption that Utah is without Rising, without Keithy, I am picking Florida to win this game. Because you're talking about a situation where your starting quarterback is out, maybe your best player is out, and Cam Rising is so much more than a starting quarterback to Utah. He's a gamer. He's experienced. He's scrappy. He provides relief in the run game. He provides. You didn't watch. Bearded, I don't know what this means, but retype that because we talked about the Notre Dame Navy game the other day. Notre Dame looks like they're going to be a really fun team. But when we look at Utah, if you don't have Cam Rising, who has relief in the running game, is a very good quarterback in terms of understanding what's necessary for the offense to keep going down the field, you're now relying on a backup quarterback who has a rushing attack I like, who has to work with a passing attack that I have questions about. Though Vele comes back, I really like Vele. Really like Vele. I think he's going to be a big force for Utah. Really think it's good he comes back for the Utes. I just don't think that if Rising and them aren't there, I just don't have them beating Florida. Unfortunately, I don't. Like I said, Bearded, and retype your comment because I'm interested in it. And we do have a lot of beards in this channel. We do. I need to try and get a sponsorship from a beard thing. We got a lot of beards in here. But no, Bearded, I watched that Notre Dame Navy game. I thought Notre Dame needs to be very excited with Sam Hartman. He came in there, did what was asked of him. I don't think that Notre Dame asked him to do a whole lot, and I think that's by design. We know with Notre Dame, the tight end play is going to be good. We know the running back play is going to be good. With Notre Dame, the offensive line play is going to be good. I think the big question and even then it was not so much of a question for me because Notre Dame had to deal with quarterback woes, I'll say, last year, being that Tyler Buckner was hurt week 2. You had the other quarterback come in. Tyler Buckner retakes it at the very end. So you had an up and down situation with the quarterback position last year. A new quarterback wasn't the big question for me. It was the transition of offensive coordinators. And in fairness, you hired from within. So I like that. Manscaped, I know. We need to get Manscaped in here. So kind of going back over it, Florida versus Utah. Right now, as it stands, I'm operating under the assumption that Cam Rising won't be there, that Keithy won't be there. And if those two aren't there, I'm going to give this game to Florida just because I think that Florida, though they have a lot of work in front of them, they're still talented. They still have SEC talent. And if you present one option to Florida, I just don't think that that's going to be a winning recipe. Richard says, I'm happy for Notre Dame. Glad they look good early. They did look good. And I'm really excited for that Notre Dame USC game. I talked about that yesterday, that USC's got to figure out that defensive front because if Estime comes in there, the way they were getting Estime involved in that game where he's a bruiser, but they also were getting him involved in the passing game a little bit. I want to see if that continues. And the other thing I love is the running backs they have, they all play off of each other very well, meaning like Estime has a skill set that you put him in there. If you do some dual running back splits, a defense has to be aware of a lot. Let's look up this Oklahoma depth chart that was released. Okay. Where are we? This article is pain. Let's go here. So offense, quarterback for Oklahoma, they have Dylan Gabriel, Jackson Arnold, and then Davis Bevel. No surprise there. Jackson Arnold has the ability. Running back, we have Marcus Major. No surprise there. If he stays healthy, I'm excited to see what he does. Then you have Tawee Walker as the junior. Then you have Javonte Barnes or Gavin Sawchuk. Now, I am surprised to see Barnes maybe not at number 2. But one thing we talked about a lot is that Tawee Walker was a guy that has a lot of ability. No, Bearded, what I was saying is they will. Or that's what I meant to say, is that the offense for Notre Dame was very bland, but I wasn't worried about their tight end play because Notre Dame typically always has good tight ends, and in the future, they will have good tight end play. Yeah, and has me thinking, there definitely is a lot more. No doubt about it. No doubt about it, Bearded. I saw your comment, and I meant to comment back to you. I did say that in the video, but what I had meant to say was, I'm not worried about their tight end play because, as I just said, Notre Dame always has good tight end play, and you hired your tight end coach to be the offensive coordinator. So I completely agree with you. And actually, Bearded, I'd take it a step further and say that's by design purposefully. I think y'all have something that you really like. Why show it now? Why show it to Navy? Not when USC is a few weeks away. I completely agree, Bearded. I'm really excited for your Fighting Irish. I really like Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman was a guy, Benjamin, no, you're not. But Marcus Freeman was a guy that a lot of teams were trying to lift. I don't need to tell you this, Bearded. You're the last person I needed to tell this, but I'm going to say it anyways. And you can confirm this. Teams have been trying to lift Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame for years now to no success. I mean, big names in college football now have tried to pull him from Notre Dame, haven't been able to. I've respected the hell out of the loyalty. I really want him to have a big year there, to really get it together. I'm excited for Notre Dame, man. Very excited. But you are right, Bearded. I misspoke in that. And what I was meaning to say is I'm not worried about what their tight end play is going to be because of who the offensive coordinator was in the history we've seen of Notre Dame's targeting tight ends in the past. Oh, yeah, especially OSU. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. Oh, yeah, they definitely tried to get him. Yes, but he's healthy right now. So going back into this depth chart for Oklahoma, what I will say about Tawee Walker, because that's where we were, that guy's got a lot of ability. And I know he's kind of a name that wasn't as talked about last year, but whenever I was watching him, whenever I highlighted him when he got to Oklahoma, the first thing I talked about was listening to the coaches that have worked with him, finding some of the sound bites that they have said, and they have glaring, I mean, they just love him. Say he's an outstanding young man, just as good of a person as he is an athlete, which is awesome to hear. But hearing about how he works, about how he wants it, and then watching what he brings to the table. I mean, this is a running back that can get involved in every facet of the game. And I think that's going to be very powerful for Oklahoma, something they very much will look to. I am surprised to see Javonte Barnes at number 3, but I think you put it best. Let him kind of get back. Good to go. Tight end, Austin Stogner, no surprise there. Blake Smith, no surprise. Cade McIntyre, the freshman, no surprise there. Austin Stogner, I think, is a big addition back for this Oklahoma team. They asked a lot of the tight end position last year, and I think it's good that they get an experienced tight end back. Looking at the wide receivers, we have Andrell Anthony, we have LV Bunkley Shelton, and Jaden Gibson. I'm not surprised about this, and in fact, I am encouraged about this. LV Bunkley Shelton has been an experienced force in college football. He was a name I was more surprised didn't get more play last year. He's a crafty wide receiver, but I will say this. Pettaway is a name that's going to be pushing LV Bunkley Shelton, and Pettaway is a name that's going to get play. Why? He's too explosive to keep off the field. And then you have Jaden Gibson. Jaden Gibson has all the ability in the world. He had some drops, but that happens. If he can clean up the drops, he's going to be very good. Let's talk about the offensive line. At left tackle, you have Walter Rouse. You have Caden Green as the second guy. Jacob Sexton is third. At left guard, you have Savion Byrd, Nate Anderson. At center, Andrew Rame, Troy Everett. Now, center is where I'm really interested in Oklahoma because Rame has been a player that has shown ability, but has shown some inconsistencies. I'm hoping this is the year he gets it all together. 100% Tijuana, and I think that I probably should have expanded upon this more. So thank you very much for making this point because it is a good one. If Major can beat dudes out that we know are good, and we know Javonte Barnes is good. We know Sawchuk is good. We know Walker is good. But we definitely know Javonte Barnes and Sawchuk are good because we saw what they did in the bowl game, and Javonte Barnes went for 500 yards last year. He's good. He's very good. So that's encouraging for Marcus Major. Love that. Love that addition there. But Andrew Rame, I'm hoping to see him shore it up this year because he's got the ability. And I think him shoring it up would be big. Let's see. My laptop doesn't want to let me be great right now. For right guard, we got McCade Mature. Makes sense. Right tackle, Tyler Guyton. Now, I think Tyler Guyton is going to be a really fun player to watch. I'm really interested to see what he does. At the slot, you have Drake Stoops, Gavin Freeman, and Jaquez Pettaway. So they're okay. I see what they're doing here. Pettaway out the slot. Look, Pettaway has the ability. Yeah, okay. I see it. So now we move on. Got it. I see what they did on this depth chart. It was a little bit confusing, and the website does not want to work. But let me try and get this website to load. 24/7 Sports is absolutely struggling right now. Okay, so on the wide receiver front, we have Andrell Anthony. Man, this is not working. I got to try and find a different depth chart, guys, because it's not even, it's completely frozen the page. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. This is a much cleaner layout too. I love 24/7 Sports, but the one in that article, that was painful to read. Let's look at this. The wide receiver, so you have Jaleel Farouk, Nick Anderson at wide receiver 1. Your other wide receiver, you have Andrell Anthony, and at the slot, you have Drake Stoops, Gavin Freeman, Jaquez Petaway. Yeah, so no surprises here. Farouk being one of your wide receivers, that is to be expected. Andrell Anthony coming in from the transfer portal, I think that he is a big addition for this team, but I also think that you had some guys that you needed to be excited about, but you didn't have the depth. Odd Future says no sight of Brennan Thompson. And you're right. There is no sight of Brennan Thompson, something we've got to watch. So that's the offense. Let's go to the defense. So defensive end, you have Rondell Bothroyd. I've heard a lot of good things about him. Coming in, he's a player they're very excited about. Defensive tackle, you have Jonah Luulu, Jordan Kelly, Jacob Lacey, Grayson Halton, Devon Sears. Jonah Luulu, I'm really excited to see. I think he's a really talented player. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. Nose tackle, Isaiah Coe, DeJohn Terry, Kevin Gilman, Ashton Sanders. Coe is a guy that if you're looking at who needs to have a big year, Isaiah Coe is a name that you're really hoping can help anchor this defensive line. DeJohn Terry, very much a welcome addition, coming in at 6'3", 321 pounds. That's what you need. You need the size along that defensive line. At defensive end, you have Ethan Downs, Trace Ford, Reggie Grimes, Marcus Stripling, Taylor Wine. So Ethan Downs being the guy there, or Trace Ford, I think that's completely understandable. Ethan Downs having a year last year. They want him to come in, really build upon what he did last year, and take over. When we look at the Mike linebacker position, you have Jaron Kanik. This is one I've called, right? And actually, interesting to note, you have Jaron Kanik, then Connor Neer, then Kobe McKenzie, and Phil Picciotti. Jaron Kanik, to me, was the obvious answer here to go along with Danny Stutzman. I know that's been a point where people have been talking about, will he, won't he? To me, that was always the obvious answer because Kip Lewis is very talented. You have some very talented guys, but they're young. Jaron Kanik's been in there a year, and his athletic ability is going to be very, very tough to keep off the field. So I'm not surprised at all to see Kanik and Stutzman being the 1-2 punch at linebacker. I think that's your super athletic linebacker duo. So excited to see that. At Cheetah, you have Justin Harrington, Dasan McCullough, Omashigo, or Shane Whittier. Now, I am not surprised here because Dasan McCullough is a very athletic person, unbelievably athletic, but he's learning a new position. Tijuana says it right here. He's learning a new position. And on top of that, he graded exceptional at run stopping, rushing the passer last year. His passing grade didn't grade as well. Now, that being said, you were asking him to pass protect out of that outside linebacker formation. But point being, they're trying to get him acclimated to being a cheetah. I talked about this in the offseason. That position is not one where you just walk into and instantly hit the ground running. I mean, it is a difficult position to learn. So much is asked of you. So Justin Harrington being the guy there right now, that's not inherently surprising. Do not be disenfranchised into believing that you will not see a bunch of McCullough, though. I absolutely believe you will. Cheetah. Yeah, look, I think that Harrington is a... You want anyone but Harrington? We'll see, man. But you got to realize 1 year under Brent Venables. This is year 2. We'll see. We'll see. But I'm not surprised. That's what I will say. At cornerback, you have Gentry Williams. Really excited about him. Then Kendall Dolby's, Makari Vickers, Jacoby Johnson. Strong safety, Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowen, Dea McCullough. Makes sense. Free safety, Reggie Pearson. So you're going to roll out Billy Bowman, Reggie Pearson as your safeties. That makes sense. And then cornerback, you have Woody Washington, Josiah Wagner, Kanai Walker, Jaden Rowe. So not a whole lot surprising on this OU depth chart. Not a whole lot that's catching me by just shock. When I look at this, it all seems to make sense to me. I'm very interested in seeing what a relief the nose tackle position can help with the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, that being said, this is a name that has been really popular. Josiah Wagner. Looks like he is going to be a guy to be excited about in the future. Let's hit some comments and then we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Ooh, what SEC stadiums? You know what, Shadow? You know what's so sad? I've only been to a handful of college games in my whole life. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that when I was young, growing up, I grew up on a horse ranch. And so we just couldn't leave. We had 65 horses. And so every Saturday and Sunday, in fact, Saturdays at the ranch, it wasn't until I got to high school when Saturdays was for college football. In my house, Sunday used to be for college football because we would tape the game Saturday. And then Sunday, we'd go feed the horses in the morning, make sure everything was good. You'd go get the ones out the pasture, change all that. And then you'd watch your college football on Sunday. And so I've never been to an NFL game. I live 30 minutes from Dallas Cowboys Stadium. I've never been to an NFL game because we just didn't have time growing up. I mean, I just was so acclimated to having to be at the ranch. So in terms of college games I've been to Bryant-Denny. I've been to AT&T Stadium to watch Texas versus UCLA, which was great. Whenever Miles Jack was with UCLA, I got to watch them at Jerry's World. And then I've been to the Cotton Bowl in 2007, whenever Auburn and Nebraska played. And unfortunately, Nebraska did not win that game. So I actually haven't been to SEC stadiums outside of Bryant-Denny. I've only ever been to Bryant-Denny. I'm hoping to change that, especially now that I do this. Hopefully I can actually, get picked up. YouTube is awesome, but I would love to end up working for somebody. 24/7 Sports, 013 Rivals, if y'all are listening. If you just need somebody to talk college football, I'll do it for the low. I just want the opportunity. Jordan says we already talked about that. Brennan Thompson is hurt. Wagner's a dude, no doubt. Tennessee for sure, no doubt. Now, if you're telling me which stadiums you should go to, LSU, no doubt. Death Valley, seeing a night game in Death Valley, that's a must for me. Bearded, you hit it. Knoxville, Rocky Top, you got to go. You just got to. That environment jumps. The Cowbells, I think, is awesome. Depends like how annoyed you get. If you get annoyed by cowbells, don't go to Mississippi State, but I think that'd be a great one. Escaping the horse ranch. Yeah, Rob. I remember when I was like 4th or 5th grade working out at the ranch with my dad. And I remember looking at him and they always told me the story. I looked at him and said, there's got to be a better way to make a living. This ain't it. And as you can see, it's not me. Ty, let's go to a Bama game. I would love to, man. I would love to. That sounds awesome. Excited for Gentry Williams. I think he's forgotten and might end up being our best. I'm so excited for Gentry Williams, Thomas. I'm so excited for Gentry Williams. Very talented individual. It's going to be big for the Sooners. It's going to be a fun year, man. All the way around. All the way around. This is the best time of the year for me because after this week, last year doesn't matter. Like, this is what makes me so excited about week 1, and this is what I'll leave you all on. Week 1 is beautiful because after this week, nothing that happened last year matters. Nothing. And for me, that's awesome because then any points of reference I need, I have them from this year, right? Like I go back and watch week 1. What did you do week 1? Because you're not who you were in 2022. Sure, that can give us some theory, some idea, as Tijuana knows I like to say theory crafting. But you are who you are, and that's what I love. New season. Yep, exactly, Rob. It's a new season. Nothing last year matters. I don't have to go back to last year. I don't have to theory craft based on a year ago. I get to theory craft based on this, and I love that. Love that. So, I mean, it cannot get here quick enough. Honestly, Tijuana, at this point, man, I'd love to go work for the Pack. I don't care, man. I just want to work for college football. That's all I really want, is just to get the opportunity. But who knows? Hopefully it'll come. Either way, got a great community here. I've always said, guys, this isn't the biggest college football community on YouTube. I think I would put y'all up with any of the other college football communities as the best college football community on the platform. I truly believe that. I mean, you think about it, we have streams all the time where we have Texas fans, Oklahoma fans, Miami fans, Bama fans, LSU fans, Notre Dame fans, USC fans, and we're just in here cutting it up. And this is a relatively new channel. I've been doing this 2 years. And that's I got to thank y'all for that. I've had comments, I've had people reach out to me saying, hey, first time I watched your channel, and it was a unique experience seeing how many people from different fan bases are in there interacting with each other. And yes, there's fans talking crap to each other, but it's always usually very respectful, and y'all talk football, which is what I love, which is why I don't have to moderate the comments. I mean, guys, think about this. I do live streams. I don't have a moderator. I haven't needed one because you guys have been great. You talk football. And that makes it much easier for me to do what I do when I get to look at chat and all I have is insightful comments all the way down. Where even if I disagree with the comment, it's an insightful comment. There's a discussion to be had. There's learning to be had. I mean, you can't ask for much more. So for that, guys, I thank y'all so much. We'll be back here. I have 2 videos coming out today. We'll be back here tomorrow through the haze, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. We got a lot more football to talk. We have just scratched the surface. I'm going to try and get a Florida State content creator on here sometime this week. We've got to break down this Florida State LSU game, and I need to bring in some help to do so because that's going to be a great one. So y'all enjoy your day. We'll see you later today on some videos. I'll be live tonight on the Bama Standard, the Final Whistle. You can catch me over there. And we'll be back tomorrow for Through the Haze. We'll see you then. That's it.